For effective communication, language should be fair. Have you ever thought of communication between a person who uses Kenya Sign Language and a person who speaks verbally? Today, in Uniquely Gifted Show, we'll be featuring Richard Mutahi. Please be our guest as we journey in his story. I'll be your host, Abby Wambua.
My name is Richard Mutahi. That's my sign name. I'm a deaf person and a leader to the deaf ministry.
What came along with your sign name? I saw you did this.
All the deaf people, they have sign names. So most of those people who don't hear, they don't know about that. So when the deaf people, when they're hearing people you talk, they will hear what you're talking about. So us as deaf people, we see, so that's why we give sign names. So initially, I was very tiny. That's why I was given that sign, Mutahi.
And where do you come from?
I stay in Kariobangi here in Nairobi, but my home village is in Murang'a.
And what happened that you ended up to be deaf?
I was born many years ago. And when I was around 16 years and a half, when I was in high school, I became sick, meningitis. It started as a headache. So my parents thought it is a simple sickness. So they went in a chemistry and they bought some medicine. And when they brought that medicine, I took that medicine. Then after 4 days, I was severely sick and I got a lot of pain at my back of my head. And sometimes I could sing at night because of that pain. So very early in the morning, my parents touched me and asked me, "How are you feeling?" So I could see their mouth talking, but I could not hear anything. I could not hear a thing. So they called an ambulance. Then they took me to Kenyatta Hospital. There in Kenyatta Hospital, I was injected some water and removed some pus in my ears. After 30 minutes, I did not feel that pain again. From that time, I've never had again. So I was admitted at Kenyatta Hospital for 1 month. Then after that month, I was released to go back home. So with my hearing problem, I could not balance because I could not control my walking when I was walking. So I could hear a lot of noise inside my ears. So there was a lot of noise inside my eardrums. So at night, when I was sleeping, I could feel my body moving upwards and down. It was a very big challenge to me. It was the only problem that I had. Then, when I was walking at night, I could not walk straight way. I could touch the walls when I was walking to support myself. So when something is in front of me, I could not know what it was. So most of the people, they could think that I've taken some beer, but it was not like that. It was because of balance problem. So most of the time, you'll see the deaf people doing that, and that is a big challenge to us deaf.
What was your first reaction when you realized you couldn't hear?
I was so much discouraged. I was on shock. That time, I thought I was the only person in the world who cannot hear. But I was so much discouraged. I stayed home for 1 year without going outside. At night I could cry. Then most of the time when I was sleeping, I could dream talking to people, some music, laughing. And when I wake up, I find myself deaf, and I was so much discouraged. That was a very big challenge to me for a long time. So when I found out that I'm deaf, I knew I have some barriers to do many things. Before, I loved listening to radio, discussing with people many things, but now I'm deaf. I was so much discouraged. So the way of getting information, I could not get more information. There was a lot of barrier. So I could stay in my house reading, and I could read. I could do a lot of reading for more than 1 year. So I read many books than when I was hearing, so that I could get more information, so that I could open my mind for the future.
Your parents, did they regret this?
They regretted it a lot. My family was affected heavily. With my family, where I was born, I was the firstborn. So most of the things, they depended on me. When I finished, they thought I could finish Form 4. So they had a lot of hopes in me. So when I changed to be deaf, so they thought it's witchcraft, so that it could break my life, my future. So that is what they thought about. So for years, it gave me a lot of problems. I went to different doctors, traditional doctors, so that I can get my hearing back again. But later, they saw it was not possible for me to become hearing. So they went to different churches. They prayed for me to get hearing, but I could not hear again. They moved to different religions, but they got tired. They left everything to God.
Your family had to adapt new ways. You had to learn new language. How was the journey?
I became deaf in 1977. That time, sign language in Kenya was not there. It was very minimal. So it was not like now, where we have sign language. So when I became deaf, you could not meet a deaf person that time. I thought I was the only person. I thought I was the only person in Kenya. So my parents could not think about sign language. Even myself, I could not think about sign language. So how did we communicate? We communicated through lip reading. That is what we used to communicate. When somebody talks, because I cannot hear, I could see the shape of the lips. Then I could remember. I connect with the mouth shape. Then I connect the word so that I could understand what the person was talking about. But that way could not give me a perfect information. For many years, until now, my family uses lip reading. So they talk, I look at them keenly, then I answer. And sometimes I can add some sign language so that can understand me. With lip reading, I cannot understand that much. Also, lip reading and some gestures, they are almost the same. For example, when I say come. So when you see jam and come, if you see the hand shape, the mouth shape, it's almost the same. Come So when I add the gestural of come, they understand very well, and we communicate and converse very well with my parents. So lip reading with some gestural helps us to communicate at home. But later, many years later, I think 15 years later, I met a deaf person for the first time using sign language. I was so much shocked. I saw them signing and I could not understand what they were signing. I felt like a new person coming the first time. So I started learning sign language for 6 months, and now I became perfect in sign language.
When you ended up being deaf, you were 16. You're still in high school. Did you continue with your studies?
Those days, special education was not that good. So we were focusing on primary school, but not high school for the deaf. When I became deaf, so it was my responsibility. The government could not help me. There was no program to further on education, on special education. University, any other tertiary college, we could not go there. So now we see there is a lot of improvement and on education for the deaf. So I could do everything on my own. I could learn, communicate, and do different programs on my own.
When you met your new deaf friend, what step did he take to help you out?
The first time, I was working in airport around 1984. It was 1984. I was in airport working there. There was one person I was working with. When that person discovered that there is a deaf person here, then the deaf person started signing. The person started signing for me. The person knew well that Mutahi don't know sign language. It was the first time. Then he started writing for me. Then he told me, I'm deaf. Are you deaf? From that time, he started teaching me sign language. For example, when we do this sign, it is work. When we do this sign, it is car. This is house. I learned a lot of signs. So I knew, do we have sign language? We have some words which have signs. So I was so much encouraged. So I told him, next Saturday, when we don't have work, we meet in town. He directs me to a specific place, in a specific office. You'll meet another Mzungu man there from Sweden, and he will encourage you what to do. So I read everything on the same. I put them on my memory. Then on Saturday when I was free, I went to town, and I found a lot of many deaf there, and they were signing and they were doing this, and myself, I was green on the same. I didn't know any sign. From there, I met many friends, and they led me to their own church, PCA, in Gong Road. We prayed there, we sang there. So they thought if I come there every day, I'll learn sign language through interacting with them. For 6 months, I went there every Sunday, and I understood sign language.
You said you were working in an airport. How was the life there?
Life there was very hard for me as a deaf person. So I met a deaf person there for the first time. So most of the people whom we were working with, I was the only deaf person there. But if something happens there and it was a major problem, most of the people there, they could point at Mutahi, telling me that because I could not hear what they were talking about, they could tell this is the person who did that. So I could not protect myself. Every time when a mistake is there, they could point at me. I'm the one who has done that mistake. Most of the time I could become angry because people could treat me different at the place of work, at the society. So I could decide to kill myself sometimes. But I knew God had some plans on me. So how could I continue with my life with those challenges? But through the grace of God, I learned how to practice patience, because with disability, if you don't have patience, life is very difficult. We have a lot of barriers. If you don't understand your disability, some will treat you harshly, some will blame you, some will laugh at you, some will talk to you like that. Maybe they talk to you, you tell them, talk again, and they start laughing. They say, look at this man, he's very funny. And they call one another so that they can look at you. This is a deaf person, he cannot hear, and they enjoy your deafness. So most of the time I got discouraged and I could feel like committing suicide. I got a lot of jokes and a lot of abuse from people. But now, life is normal to me. I cannot think of killing myself because of how people are treating me. Patience is enough for me. I continue practicing it.
You said patience inspired all you through. How did you fight those challenges in the work? Later on, you moved in the school of sign language. How was the lesson in there with the new students?
In 1 year after I became deaf, I learned to be patient so that I can continue with my life. Also, I learned how to ignore some abuse that I was receiving, so I could focus on my positive side of life, and I could not listen to the negativity of what people were talking about. So, after I learned sign language, I started working together with the deaf community, the welfare, to how to lead them, how to work together with them. When I was around 23 years, I was living in Dandora together with my aunt. That's how slowly, through God's hands, I met a deaf girl who later became my wife. So as I was working with the deaf people, I understand very slowly that we have a big gap between the hearing and the deaf people. So the way the deaf people see things is not the same way the hearing world see things. So I took myself as I was in between. I understand the hearing world and I could understand the deaf world. So what the deaf people could not understand and what the hearing people could not understand, I could know what their needs were. So I started working as a bridge in between to make the two worlds meet. So I could explain to the deaf people how the hearing people were feeling, and I could explain to the hearing people how the deaf people were feeling about them. So this was something which was a blessing, and it made me not to be discouraged. So if I could meet any person, any individual, I could tell them I'm a deaf person, I could not cry, and I was not discouraged.
Most of people believe that people who are deaf cannot also speak. Is that true?
In my Kikuyu language, a person who is deaf, they label this individual as a stupid person. So the society thinks that when somebody doesn't hear, this person cannot talk, and at the same time, he doesn't have good minds. So my brothers and sisters who are my followers, when a visitor comes and knocks, and maybe the visitor wants to talk to my parents, and he wants to talk to Mutahi, and he thinks Mutahi cannot talk, so he looks around and finds my younger sister or my younger brother and talks to them and explain everything on what they wanted to tell my parents. And when that person goes, truly I get so much annoyed. So that person did not talk to me because I'm deaf. He talked to my brother, my younger brother or my younger sister, because they are hearing. So I could not understand the way of how the hearing people are taking the deaf people. So they could think my younger brothers and my younger sisters are clever than me. So they thought that I cannot understand anything, I'm stupid. So slowly, things got worse. My parents could focus on my hearing siblings, and then they could ignore talking to me. I was so much discouraged. This one affected my heart and my minds. So I started to know how to work with their attitudes.
Was it an easy way letting your parents know your new sign name? Was it an easy way letting your parents know your new sign name?
Up to this day, I have never had them having that interest. They are still wishing I could be a hearing child. When we have a family meeting, maybe the old people who are coming, maybe it is a celebration or dowry, and all maybe they need the firstborns to be there. So they cannot invite me. They usually invite my brother, my follower brother, because they think I am not hearing, so they only tell me, sign this, then we'll later explain to you. So my younger brother will explain to me. So I feel that they are not treating me fairly when they do that. So very few people, they can change this attitude. So it's my responsibility to change them.
As we be going for the break, would you sign my name so that we'll be back with more?
Your sign name, I think, I can give you a sign name. That is your sign name. Because I see you always smile and your name is Abigail, so I've given you that sign name. I hope you love this sign name.
Yes, how do you do yours? Thank you.
Thank you.
And I agree with the new name, Abby. Dear viewer, we have a lot for you when we are back from the break. Keep in touch with us We will be right back. And we are back with more, listening from the world of the deaf. Welcome, dear viewer, be part of us. You say that you met a girl who was deaf, who later on happened to be your wife.
When I was living in Dandora, there was a girl who was living in my neighborhood. So we became friends. After a few months, I saw that girl every day in the morning, dressed smartly, then comes late in the evening. It happened that every Saturday. So one day I asked this lady, where do you always go every Saturday in the morning and come back in the evening? Then she told me that I'm a member of the Adventist church. So I was shocked. I remember I read another book about worshiping on Saturday. So I said, there's no problem. So if in future we get married, please don't force me to go to your church. Let me look for my own church, then I'll decide which church I want to go. So we got married. In 15 years' time, I never entered to his church. I never went to his church. So every day, they could prepare themselves, then they go to church.
And how was the life? She heard, you didn't hear. How was life?
Life was not that easy. Both of us, we could practice patience with one another. When my wife could talk to me, she could not understand my sign language. So I used to lip read a lot. Sometimes I could miss some sentences. For example, I could teach her some signs so that he could mix the signs with the lips so that I could capture. So sometimes when I talk loudly or I could lower. When I talk, my wife could tell me, please, you're talking very high. Please control your voice. So with us hearing, we can control our voice. But a deaf person, because we are not hearing ourselves, we don't know how to control ourselves. So sometimes a deaf person cannot control their voices because they don't know what is in their environment. So they can talk loudly and people can look at them like they are mad. So my wife could get that patience. I could tell him, please, when I'm high, tell me low. So my wife could cope up with me.
What was her first reaction when you asked her out to be your girlfriend?
First, I want to talk about attitude. Most of the people outside there, and girls specifically, and also the society, they ask themselves, a girl who is normal, marrying a blind person, a disabled person, a deaf person, how? I believe it's the work of God how that gets there. So it's God who makes this individual differently, a blind, a lame. It is God's working. So God changes a person to be attracted to this other individual who is with special needs, and people get that shock and see the power of God in that. So the family of my wife, they got so much shocked. Our daughter marrying a deaf person. What is the problem, God? They questioned God, why is it happening like this? Many girlfriends were so much shocked to my wife. They were so much shocked. So when we talk about love, it's overboard. It's the love of God which makes this one happen.
Are you blessed with children?
3. They are adult. I have 6 grandchildren. My first son is 32 years. The second born, 31. The last born, 29. They are big.
How was the journey coping up with all children?
There were many challenges, but God led us very well. When they were growing, they see their parents there, and they were normal children. When they are around 2 years, they know their father is not like others. So most of the time they could come and touch me so that I could see. So they could draw their attention when they come and touch me. But when they are talking to their mother, they could talk to their mother. So they could use pointing and touching when they are talking to me. So it's normal. When you see a child talking to their parents who are deaf, they only use pointing, and God gives these children wisdom so that they can know how to communicate to us. So only this one I can say it is the power of God. So God is showing people something to learn from us.
You said you are a leader. How do you handle your group?
Before I became deaf, I learned a lot about Adventist teaching, about baptism. I saw that people have forgotten to teach the deaf people the Bible. So I started getting to deaf churches, the Sunday churches in Kariobangi, Ongatarongai, Nairobi, Ngong, different places, teaching them about the Bible, explaining about the prophecy, anything which I knew on what I learned when I became deaf. Around 2011, that is when the deaf ministry in the Adventists was launched. So the preaching which I used to preach before, that is what I'm doing now. I've preached in different places, teaching about the deaf. The experience which I had when I was leading the deaf in the association, this one is helping me so much to lead the deaf people from elder point of view.
What are the steps as the church in particular done to help you people with hearing impairment?
Well, the church itself doesn't understand about the deaf. So we have to explain to them about the deaf. So this one has helped a lot when we explain to the church. Now the church, many churches have special needs ministry. They organize a camp meeting for special needs people. From 2014 until now, I always preach in camp meetings in Kenya. For example, Nakuru, Mombasa, Kisumu, Uganda, Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa. I've gone in different places preaching. So it means these people, they want to know about God. So it needs somebody who has experience so that he can explain the word of God. So God has chosen me, whereby he made me to become deaf so that I can read the Bible and I explain and preach to the deaf people. That is my passion in life.
What about the government? What steps have they made?
The government is making a lot of progress about special needs in general. For example, they have an association which is dealing with special needs, and it's helping to advocate for the rights of the disabled people. So they register people with special needs, they give them a card. Also, they can give them tax exemption. Also, when you want a vehicle, they can give you tax exemption. So this one, it's helping the special needs people a lot, and it is developing their life. Also in education, we have a lot of university, not like my time. We did not have universities dealing with people with special needs. But now we have many people who are doing masters, degrees, PhD. People who are deaf now, many of them, they have a bright future than my time. So each thing has its own time. So we cannot complain, because when they graduate, they develop people with special needs.
There is someone outside there who's deaf, who's blind, who cannot speak, has lost hope. What's your words to them?
I can advise them, because initially when I became deaf, I did not have hope. But later in my life, I understood my position. I understand why I never died that time when I was in hospital. God gave me life. I never understood why. And later, I understood. Slowly by slowly, I understood. So you have to ask yourself, why? I know you are asking yourself that question. But I am giving you hope on my side. I never knew that I'll become this. I did not know how I'll control my family. I didn't know how to do different things. I could have different questions when I became deaf. But through God's grace, God opened ways, and what I needed, I have now. And my mission in life is to preach, to evangelize, and encourage people with special needs. I explained to the hearing people about the special needs, how God gives people disability and he uses them. So those people, he points at those people, and also the Bible points at those people, and they are speaking to the special needs people, which is very important to them. So remember, the blind man, when the disciples saw this blind man, they asked Jesus, why is this blind man blind? Is it the parents or the person sinning? No, Jesus has said, it's not the man who sinned or the parents. It's because God wants to show his power through this blind person. In another way, God chooses this man through him to show something to the society, which will make now the society to understand. I see it's my mission to explain to the society so that they can understand and then encourage people with special needs. They should not be discouraged. God has power and love and mission for them.
Thank you so much for your time. And dear viewer, when you focus on possibility, opportunities weigh in through. So it's your time, it's your chance to take a new stand for people with disability. There is hope beyond disability. And I have been your host, Abby Wambua, and my guest,
Richard.
See you next time when it comes to Uniquely Gifted. Thank you.